Welcome to Horror Makes Us Happy, the podcast where we ask the question, what is it about horror that makes us happy? Your hosts are Steve Becker and myself, Chris Whitman, and you can find out more about us at our website, horrormakesushappy.com. Today's guest is Anthony Cotter. He's best known for being the author of the awesome comic series Sharpe Knives, and musician and producer and founder of AcidBrain Productions. Welcome, Anthony. How you doing today?
Good. How are you guys?
Well, and yourself?
Before we get started, is there anything you want to plug before we get started on the meat of the interview? Any projects you're working on or partners and stuff?
Well, as you mentioned, Sharpe Knives, that's the big one. Sharpe has an E at the end, as it's the last name of the knife maker in the comic. He's a master bladesmith and serial killer, and he murders a mob boss's daughter and gets in a whole mess of hot water, and everything spirals out of control. It's going to be brutal and gory and hopefully everything that horror people love. So That's the big one that I would like to plug.
Cool.
Appropriate. Yes, I am definitely a fan of the comic as well. Not biased at all. I'm definitely not visually in it as a character. But, I mean, that aside, I am definitely digging the comic so far. It's a cool mix. Like, it starts off and you're like, I'm not sure if this guy is the protagonist or the antagonist. He's doing some really fucked up things. I don't think he's a good guy, but all right, this is our main character. And there's lots of blood and entertainment. So yeah, I'm good with this.
Awesome. Yeah, we don't have a lot of good guys in the Sharpe Knives universe.
Not really. No, it's one of those bad guys for like bad guy versus less bad guy scenario.
Potentially less.
I'm very excited for y'all to see how that evolves.
Yes. All right. Before we get started, a little information for yourself and the listeners. Here are your trigger warnings. We're going to be talking about horror movies, which could involve anything from murder, rape, suicide, child abuse. There will be F-bombs. If you're not prepared for that, please go take care of yourself and come back. Otherwise, listen to us say things like fuck, shit, cunt, piss, and
cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits.
Those two.
He always gets the first half, and I always follow. I get the back half.
Yeah.
You get your checklist. You get all the banned words.
Well, it works because I can never remember the first ones, but for some reason he does, and he falters, and then I get the back half. So that's good.
Yeah. Team effort.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good.
So in the interview, we'll be covering questions in three sets of questions, basically covering your childhood, adolescence, and adulthood. Basically, to try and get to the root of what it is about horror that you enjoy, and possibly what it is about the whole horror aspect that you don't enjoy. Like, if there were things that terrified you as a child, or what kind of movies or horror things you were into at that phase of your life. So, first thing with childhood, I guess. Can you think of any main influences horror-wise, or any things in media, like TV, books, when you were a kid?
When I was a kid, my biggest memories of horror as a kid was going to the video store and, seeing like the Freddy and Jason movies on the shelves and just being like, holy crap,
Yeah.
It's kind of, too little to watch it yet, but looking at the covers and just thinking, wow, being just intrigued, And then as I got a little bit older, started to finally get to see some of these movies, and I don't know, it was a mixed bag. Like, some of them were kind of a letdown, the ones that I expected, to really bring the most horror to the table. And then some unexpected ones turned out to be the creepier ones, I thought, for me.
Yeah.
I might have a unique perspective on the kind of horror that I enjoy.
No, I can relate. You're right. It's like just like you said, you see that wall of awesome when you go to the video store when you're a kid, and you're just like, oh my god, all these things. I wish my parents would let me watch them. And then as you get older, you go back and watch some of these things as adults. Sometimes you're like, that's not a good film. I don't know why I was scared of this.
Yeah, exactly.
So did you get to see any as a child, or did you not get to see any until you were already into your teens?
Yeah, probably into my teens is when I started to actually be able to watch some of those movies.
Okay. So no memories of horror at all as a childhood, during childhood, except seeing the covers?
I mean, yeah, if you're talking like, under 13 years old, probably, but after that, I got pretty well into it.
Okay. So if not horror movies, then in general, was there anything that you remember scaring you as a child?
being buried alive. That concept freaked me out when I was a kid.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when I was young, I caught a glimpse of, God, what was it? The Vanishing, not the original foreign one. I know I'm not that cool. It was the Jeff Bridges one, and yeah, ever since that, same. Like it's a very visceral fear being buried alive because yeah, there are some movies like that shit with Uma Thurman where she 1-inch punches her way out of a coffin, but I'm sorry, no. When there is 6 foot of earth on top of you and you have wood and just your fingernails to survive, you're done. That's game over.
Do you remember what introduced you to that fear?
It might have been an Edgar Allan Poe story, maybe. I couldn't tell you which one, though.
Cask of Amontillado?
Amontillado.
It very likely could be. My memories of the Poe stuff is really faded. I was younger when I read that stuff. I read a lot of Lovecraft in high school, too.
Nice.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, right.
Did you participate in Halloween as a kid?
Oh, yeah. I did the vampire thing, the ghost thing, the mummy thing, all the stereo. One year I was this random guy from Star Trek who had half of his face white and half of it black. It was like the most random character ever.
I remember that guy. Yeah. What was your favorite costume?
Oof, I don't know. You know what? Well, it wasn't as a kid, but in the grand scheme of life, my favorite Halloween costume I ever made was Towley.
That sounds like a really fun costume to have, just going around all night like, hey, you want to get high?
I went for a walk around the neighborhood and I got some laughs. It was great.
What phase of life was that? I'll write it down now.
Oh, I was a grown-up. I was like 27.
Okay.
Did you come across any keypads and have to type in the melody to Funky Town?
No keypads.
Oh, Towley.
Any least favorite memory? Any least favorite costumes when you were a kid?
Least favorite costumes? I don't know. I felt like every costume, for the most part, kind of felt like a disaster. I'm old. I'm 38, man. It's hard to remember these costumes when I was a kid.
Just asking in case something popped off the head that, some people can immediately answer that question, Did you have
Scary
any
dreams?
There you go.
Did you have any scary dreams as a kid?
I did. I definitely had a dream about Freddy once. You know what? I'll tell you a great dream that I had when I was a kid. You're going to like this one. I had this dream, and all of a sudden I'm in this big hallway type corridor, and there's like a million signs everywhere pointing to this like one direction, this hallway, and it's like, don't go here, like stay away, you know what I mean? And of course, I'm in the dream, and it's all dark and creepy, so I start walking down there, and I walked into this room, and next thing I know, I get gutted by some serial killer. I don't even see him. It's just like a shadow, and his knife goes into my stomach and cuts right up to my chest, and then I just kind of slink back into a closet door. And I'm like in the closet door, gutted, like blood's dripping out everywhere. And I look, and there's this woman next to me, and she's been gutted too. And we're just like, shit, Well, this is fucked. We just got killed.
How old were you?
I couldn't say. I was on the younger side, but definitely stuck with me, though.
I can imagine so.
Yeah. Rather visceral dream there.
I had one other dream as well where I was in a fight with some guy. I ended up knocking him on the ground, and I picked up this big old rock, and I just crushed his head with it. That was another crazy dream I had. You
mentioned Freddy in a nightmare. Did that come later or also?
That was probably earlier, but my memory of it's also not as good. I feel like he was just chasing me around with a glove, and I was trying to run away.
Was there ever a time that you were actually terrified of something in real life?
Let's see, real life. Well, when I was 8, these 2 kids lived down the street from me that I kind of played with sometimes. They were older. They were 12 and 13. Mm-hmm. One time they locked me in their house, and they wouldn't let me leave, and they locked me out on the second floor balcony for a while, and they pulled out a knife on me and all this crazy shit. And I was that kind of freaked me the hell out. I caught an opportunity, and I pushed one of them off, kicked the other one, and ran out the door and ran home. But that was a freaky experience.
When you say kicked one off, do you mean off the balcony?
No. That would be pretty cool, but no. One of them was holding me, and the other one was walking at me with a knife, and I elbowed the one that was holding me in the stomach, and I picked the other one and just took off. It was my chance to get out of there.
Right.
Jesus.
I don't think he was going to do anything with the knife, but I was 8, and this 13-year-old's coming at me with a big knife. It's crazy look in his face. Kind of freaked me out.
Yeah, that'll freak an 8-year-old out. That's perfectly normal. I mean, it's like, yeah, locking somebody out on a balcony, haha, it's all fun and games. But you pull out a knife, there's that kid probably mutilated some animals.
Maybe. Yeah, I could definitely take this call in a different direction.
Yeah.
Did you have anybody in your childhood, friends or family who was into horror?
Any like-minded friends in the horror genre?
I had a friend of mine that lived down the end of the street. He liked horror, and he was probably the first person in my life who I kind of bonded over with horror. I remember watching, I think I watched Ghost in the Machine at his house. I remember we went to the movies and we saw Event Horizon when it came out. And to this day, to this day, I still consider that to be like one of the most genuinely scary films ever made. And there's not many films I say that about.
How old were you when you saw that?
Well, I saw it at the movies, so I could look up the year. I could go grab the DVD and look at the date that it came out.
1997.
Ah, there you go. So
yeah, I got Google.
7. So I was 15? Man,
okay.
I thought I was younger than that when that came out. I was definitely... That must have come out before 97, right?
Google says 97. It's the one with Sam Neill with the, the haunted spaceship and everything, right?
Yeah.
All right. I mean, we can put that down as in the teenage years. I was just asking because you'd mentioned the friend at the end of the street and Ghost in the Machine. I didn't know where that falled into childhood or teenage years.
All that time is a blur for me.
Right?
I know the feeling. I moved around so much when I was a kid that I don't even think so much about the years. I have my memories, and then the first thought to myself is, okay, where was I living at the time? And then I can trace it back from there. All right. So in your case, at least, then childhood didn't particularly make you happy as a child. It was sort of just null.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds ambivalent.
Yeah, I didn't... childhood, I just... I don't know, I feel like I was really sheltered, and I wasn't able to really get into the stuff I wanted to get into until I got a little bit older.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving to your teenage years then. So I've got Ghost in the Machine, Event Horizon. Anything else that really jumped out at you as being impacting you in the horror genre? Teenage years?
Trying to piece together my timelines of when things came out here. I remember it was a little after teenage years, but when I saw the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre film, that was a film that really stood out for me and was a game changer as far as horror goes.
Okay.
I thought that was a genuinely creepy film. And for me, the scariest horror has always been the stuff that's not supernatural, like the stuff that can really happen in the real world. That's what always grabbed me as being the scariest stuff.
Yeah.
Or sometimes the stuff that just barely borders on supernatural,
Yeah, like a real life base with a little bit of a supernatural tint to it. But
yeah, like Event Horizon is a great example of that. They're in the future and they're in this spacecraft and the thing disappears to this other dimension, and the fact is that we don't know what the possibilities are in the universe. We don't know. It's not outside the realm of possibility, and to me that makes it all the more scary.
I think that was kind of a theme in the 90s, it seems, with horror movies. Like, they would take things that were supernatural and out of this world and then give them a real world twist. Like, the whole Event Horizon thing it was a ship that went to hell, which is paranormal and supernatural, but they're like, oh no, but hell is just another dimension. Kind of like how Doom did it. Like, it gives it that real world possibility of, it's another dimension. There you go. That's how it could actually happen.
Yeah, same thing with Hellraiser.
Yeah. All you need is one of them boxes.
So, anything else jump out at you as really stand out in your teenage years?
Let's see. Another movie, I'm not sure when it came out. Another one that I thought was a genuinely scary film was Session 9. You guys familiar with that one?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Denver State Mental Hospital.
That's one of the best slow burns ever.
It just borders on that supernatural,
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's almost believable still, even when you get to that very last line in the movie that I thought was just awesome when you hear the the alternate voice talking through the schizophrenic person that says, "I live in the weak and the wounded, Doc."
Mhm.
I just thought that gave me chills,
I don't know if you saw it during your teenage years, but just hearing you describe that makes me think of Jacob's Ladder.
Oh, I did see that. I'm trying to. I have real hazy memory of it. I remember the guy, he's just unraveling and like shit's just going crazy around him and he's trying to hold it together. But did they remake that film?
They were going to, but God, I hope they didn't.
Yeah, I think I heard they were going to remake it, but never actually heard about it getting released.
Oh no, they did. It came out last year. No. Yeah, I don't remember this one being in theaters. I wonder why.
So let's go back to the ones that you mentioned that were impacting on you. Ghost in the Machine, Event Horizon, Texas, Chainsaw, Session 9. What was it about these things that you did like?
Some of them being grounded in reality, or at least, being almost believable that they could be, Not so much Ghost in the Machine. I just threw that out there as an early childhood movie that I saw, but the others were definitely influential films.
Okay. So you like that they were grounded in reality.
The real life possible fear, I guess you could say, or real life possible terror.
I just feel like once you get into the realm of supernatural, it's just anything goes. You can make up whatever you want. You know what I mean? And certainly people have done that effectively, and I respect that. It's a great thing. But to me, to have it be something that could happen in real life just makes it that much more visceral and real, and like makes me more interested personally.
Well, what I'm thinking is that it's sort of a vague statement, and I'd like to try to drill down on exactly what it was that you were either excited by or scared by. Saying it could happen in real life. Well, but what? Drowning, being stabbed, being hung. What was it? What were the individual things that excited you or scared you?
As far as supernatural versus not,
you could answer it that way, or in relation to any of the movies we just mentioned.
Well, I just think like when you have like these unstoppable killers like Jason and Michael Myers who just keep coming back over and over again, no matter what happens, it just makes it harder and harder to believe and be invested in it being possible. You know what I mean? Or when you have like these ghosts, or like, I know we have a lot of stories of hauntings that are considered to be true to life, and I just have a harder time wrapping my mind around that as being something. I don't know. It just doesn't seem as real to me.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's that much more disconnected from real life, so it's safer. Like something like Texas Chainsaw. Based on the real life happenings of Ed Gein, it's something that totally could happen because it's just a family of psychopaths living in a house. It's not a ghost or a being from another dimension. It's something that
exactly
is based in real life.
Exactly. Yeah. Like after I saw that first Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and you look at Leatherface, and he's just this. He's probably more scared of the people he kills, than they are of him. He's just a psychopath. He doesn't know what the hell's going on, and all he knows is to chop people up because of his fucked up family. And to me, that's some scary shit. Like,
yeah,
there's people out there that are like that.
Real life monsters that are just developed from bad social habits, really.
Yep.
All right. That's. I think you just said maybe the first thing that is an answer to the question I just asked, and to give a better clarification on that. So, where you say real life monsters were something that scared you,
real life threat?
Well, no, because even threat is too vague. So you're saying, well, there's this threat that's realistic. Yes, but what's the threat? Do you know what I'm saying?
Bodily harm? I mean,
well, that could be one answer, yes. Because there could also be psychological harm. Having some of these things happen to you is not just physically damaging; it's also mentally damaging.
Yeah, that's for sure. Can you ask one more time? Maybe I'm trying to figure out what you're asking.
So, in these movies that you're talking about that you were afraid of, things happened that you said, I was more afraid of these things because it was realistic. But what were the things that you were afraid of?
It's not so much the things as the forces doing the things. Like when I'm watching a movie and it's like this, oozy monster coming out of a wall from another dimension, that to me that is less terrifying than, the thought of some real life killer who's going to be creeping through your window. You know what I mean? There's more disbelief that takes away from the ability to be effectively scary for me.
So it maybe it's not about any particular act, it's the actor, as you're saying. So whether it's, being stabbed or hung or drowned or strangled or whatever, it's not any particular act, it's the actor that is scarier to you.
Yes, it's the malevolent force behind the act. If that is something that could really exist, I think it's scarier than if it's some monster that somebody dreamed up. You know what I mean? Like, for example, we have the new It movies, and I think they're great. They're awesomely done. But like at the same time, the monster that Pennywise is, he's very much a fictitious kind of thing. You're never going to see.
Yeah, he's fantastical. Like, when was the last time when was the last time in the news you heard about a giant Paul Bunyan statue trying to kill a child? Like, that's a little separated from real life.
Yeah.
But then with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you go wandering out in the desert, stumble upon some crazy family. That's something that could really be out there. And to me, that's a scarier thing, But everybody's done. Honestly, I feel like I'm in the minority. I feel like most people seem to prefer supernatural horror.
I don't know. I think for our experience so far, at least in the interviews, it's been sort of a mix for different reasons.
I'd say, as far as what I've seen in the industry, it ebbs and flows. There's certain waves of certain themes being popular. Like, for a while there was a found footage thing, and then after that there was a paranormal thing. I'm seeing real life killers kind of on a rise with reboots, so that doesn't really count. But I don't know. You got like home invasion movies, like was it Hush, Intruders, The Strangers? A lot of that in the last 5 to 10 years.
Well, I think also another way of saying this is that you can interpret the same thing many different ways, and people do. Anthony, you're now our 10th interview, and so far of the 9 that we've completed, we've only had two that I would consider duplicates in terms of having people who found the same kinds of thing scary. But a lot of these interviews have referenced a lot of the same movies, but have found different things about them to be scary, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
So far, we're only in teenage years.
That's true. And, part of the idea of doing this podcast is to hopefully get, quite a number of people interviewed and start to see if we can see some trends. And so we definitely only have, if we have only 10 interviews done, then there's definitely not enough to indicate a trend. But I do think it's interesting that out of the 10 that we only have 1 duplicate so far. That alone is odd to me. But
people are different.
Yes. Yeah. So you mentioned this kid at the end of the street. Did you have any other friends or family in your teenage years that became sort of like a horror crew?
Not really. I was very much a loner with the whole horror thing, and kind of in general, I was very much a loner most of my life.
How can I say this? Did you know you were supposed to be scared of these things, or did you know that it was meant as entertainment?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Which?
Yeah, which one?
I know that it's meant as entertainment. Yeah. I was never I never losing sleep over horror.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess that kind of comes back to the same thing with the type of genre and the distancing of it. It's easy to know that something's entertainment when it's a ball of fur that's a mutant porcupine from space. There's certain things that you don't take seriously by default, and it's like, aliens. We haven't seen any of those ever, so I don't have to be afraid of it. It's entertainment.
Right. But he did mention, for example, Texas Chainsaw, and he's talking about how it's grounded in reality. So,
Now, you see, I think Alien is a phenomenal movie, especially for its time.
Yeah,
I liked Aliens as well, and I think just the fact that they're way the hell out there, and this creature they encounter, it's not a whole lot different than some of the insects we have down here. Like, that's a film that is just tinges on reality too, and that makes it all the more scary.
Kind of does, yeah. I mean, the only thing fantastical about it is the alien life form, which we as a society, as of yet, haven't seen any proof on. So that part's fantastical. But you're right, like the behavior of it, the fact that they're out in space and it's just another organism. It's animal-like.
And that's actually, you know what? Now this goes back to what you were asking me about before, and I'm just thinking of it now that we're talking about aliens. Is I remember being a kid and my mom watching Aliens and seeing like the thing burst out of the stomach, and that freaked me out when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you that. Like I said, these memories are so hazy, but sometimes they come back. And
Yeah.
Well, that's the point of us asking them, in these different phases, because just like you say, sometimes having the question asked a different way can trigger something that you'd forgotten about. So, did you continue participating in Halloween as a teen?
I'm trying to think when I stopped. I probably stopped doing the whole dress up for Halloween thing once I started working when I was 15.
In some of your previous comments, I mean, it sounds to me like, at least in your childhood and teenage years, you were kind of leaning towards just the fact that life is scary. Was there any time in your teenage years where you were actually terrified of something?
What about like real life events? Like anything terrify you when you were a teen?
Real life event. Well, when I was a teenager, I was on my driveway and I was having a wrestling match with my guitar player in my band at the time. And my bass player's wife started to back her Chevy Blazer down the driveway, and that we were wrestling on. I was literally like laying on the ground, and this tire. I look up and I see the tire about to run directly over my lower back, and the tire hit my lower back.
Oh,
and I said, "Holy shit!" And just as the tire hit my lower back, the truck stopped, and I like scrambled away, and I was just like. If it drove another foot, I would have been crushed under the thing. So that was like probably the scariest thing that happened as a teenager.
For good reason.
Yeah. And it's kind of a trend with that with the teenage years. Like any terrifying real life events are usually some kind of like near death experience or near grave injury experience.
Yeah.
Almost getting run over by a car, things like that.
Yeah. As one does.
Yeah.
Did you have any really scary dreams as a teen?
As a teen and beyond, I've had a great many apocalypse dreams. I've had dreams about tsunamis and floods. I've had dreams about war and explosions. It's really crazy. Like it happened many times and it kind of freaks me out.
Any of your dreams ever come true, do they?
Not yet.
Fingers crossed.
But yeah, I've had dreams where I looked out. I used to live right on the water. Like my old house, you could jump off my front yard into the ocean. And I used to have dreams there of like, I remember once I looked out and like all the flats, like, how before the tsunami hits, like the water like goes way out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had the dream that I saw like, the water getting pulled way the hell out from the flats. And then like in the distance, you just saw this monstrous wave just like coming in. And it's just like, holy shit, we're fucked.
That's about the only reaction there. Like, what do you do? Because I mean, those things go several blocks inland, so you're right there on the shore. It's just like, well, I mean, I guess
depending how big it is, many miles inland.
Get on the roof would be the best course of action.
Yeah, I've had some wild apocalypse dreams, man.
Other than the fact that they're apocalyptic, do you see any common thread with them?
They end unresolved. Like I still, it's not like the end happens and then everything's over and then I wake up. It's just like shit's hitting the fan and then the dream ends.
Yeah, like that whole shit's hitting the fan, then it ends abruptly. Like you see the mushroom cloud in the distance, and then it's time to
go to work, and I'm like, Jesus, the world just ended. Now I have to go make eggs.
Yeah, you get to work. Your coworker's like, "Hey, how you doing? Good. In this reality, I just saw one where I wasn't so good, but I'm good."
Did any of these fears in your movies or real life or any of your experiences cause you to change your behaviors as far as triggering fears that you didn't have before? Or
I don't think so. I've never been like a very fearful person in general, but I love the idea of the horror genre and horror movies, and I just think there's so much more that can be done with it than is already out there. And there's a lot of cool new films coming out that are doing that. I think like I thought Mandy was a really standout movie. Like it's just this psychedelic head trip of a film that doesn't make any sense, but it's just great just for the atmosphere and like, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing that was one you saw as an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah, it came out 2019, I think.
Okay. What is it that you love about horror? I forget your exact wording you just said a minute ago. Something about the idea of horror, something like that.
I think it's I don't know, I guess it's just got that taboo vibe about it, you know? It's like it's the thing that everybody's freaked out by, and it's weird and it's different and it's creepy, and I don't know, I'm just drawn into it. Maybe it's just my nature.
It's that forbidden fruit.
Yeah. Action.
It's fun.
It is. It's fun. That's the best way to put it. It's fun.
So, okay, moving into adult years then. So you mentioned Mandy. What other horror related stuff has really struck you as an adult?
Here we go.
Now we're getting to the good
really
stuff.
Now I can really get in there. Yeah. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Rob Zombie. He's my favorite horror director. Devil's Rejects is probably my favorite horror film. I just think it's fun. It's like it fits with my based in reality thing for the most part that I mentioned earlier. It's got great characters, great dialogue. There's humor in it. I love when there's a little bit of humor mixed in. I feel like a lot of horror feels like they need to not include humor. Just I don't know, just as like a thing. And I think it's better when it's in there. I really like serial killer movies. American Psycho is one of my favorites. The House That Jack Built has become one of my favorites. I consider Joker to be a horror movie, regardless of whatever it's stereotyped as. And I think that's excellent film.
Definitely has a dark theme to it. I mean, cinematography and everything overall. So yeah, you can consider it a horror movie.
Tarantino is my favorite. I know he's not, a horror director, but I feel like his films kind of the amount of violence and it just borders on horror. Some of it.
I mean, he's done some. Was he producer or director on Dust Till Dawn?
I know he starred in it, but I know that was a Robert Rodriguez directed film.
Yeah, that's right. I think he produced it.
That's a movie I really like. I love how it's just, you get the really straightforward situation, and then halfway through it just goes completely haywire. I think it's fun when movies do things like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can't think of any examples right now, but I've definitely seen a few like professional and indie horror movies where the best part about it is it's almost a trope, like, kids go camping in the woods and then there's a psycho killer there, but like something else, like someone's going to a tennis match or something normal that's not normal at all, but you know what I'm talking about. And then out of nowhere, crazy psycho shit happens. Like, yeah, I like it when stories do that.
Yeah, like I was just so thrown off when all of a sudden it started turning into vampires.
Exactly.
It was fun. It's a fun movie.
Cool.
Planet Terror was kind of a fun one. Another Robert Rodriguez flick.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to look over across the room at my movie collection here. I think one film that I'm a sucker for serial killer movies in particular, and it's a movie called Mr. Brooks that I think is great, and nobody ever talks about it. It's got
that keeps popping up in my feed. Yeah, who was in that?
Kevin Costner plays a serial killer, and William Hurt plays his alter ego, like basically his serial killer side. And it's just a great movie. It's clever, like it's well acted. The story's original. It was supposed to be a trilogy, but it didn't do well enough in the movies for them to, budget the next two, which really bummed me out. But I thought that was a cool one.
Oh, you got that chick from CSI in it too. How about that?
Yeah, Demi Moore's in it.
Mm-hmm. And William Hurt. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen a classic that he's in called Altered States.
I have seen bits and pieces. I need to sit down and watch the whole thing. And that movie's about psychedelics, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's about psychedelics plus sensory deprivation chamber experiments. Basically, the guy does ayahuasca in a sensory deprivation tank and opens up some parts of his mind and things, and things happen. He may or may not kill a goat.
I'm gonna have to give that movie a watch because anything to do with psychedelics I'm interested in.
Any particular reason you're into psychedelics?
I mean, I've had a lot of experience with them and some transformative experiences, and I just think they're the most fascinating thing under the sun. So anytime they incorporate it in a movie, I'm intrigued.
Yeah, I can kind of understand, as you say, the or Chris said, it can open up some doors and you never really know what's going to be opened up. And like you mentioned with the Dusk Till Dawn and some of the other things that we've talked about, having the things go off the rails into the left field unexpectedly,
Plus,
anytime you have a movie that involves psychedelics, it's going to kind of be like that because you never know where they're going to take it.
Yeah. Also, like with movies with psychedelics in them, they kind of blur that line of what's based in reality and what has that realistic fear and what is paranormal and otherworldly and has that otherworldly fear. Whereas, when you're on psychedelics, it kind of blurs the lines between the two. So things that are paranormal can become real life and vice versa.
Exactly. I try to incorporate some of that into the writing in Sharp Knives, which I won't give too many spoilers about it, but I mean, you saw a little bit in issue 2, and you'll see more.
Is there a character that partakes in psychedelics?
There is. In issue 2, we introduced this hippie character. He's basically just this side character that our main character buys his weed from. And there's one scene, and he mentions, he busts his balls. He's like, oh, like that time you freaked out on those mushrooms I gave you. And there's like a little scene, and we see our main character, and he's like just in mental torment. Like he's just experiencing all the crazy shit that he's done, and he's having things happen to him, and he's just in a real shitty place because he's decided to try these out, and he's probably never going to try them out again.
Yeah. If I recall correctly, the page there was like basically like a psychedelic collage of terrible things and graphic violence happening. It was just, Martin did a really good job with that one.
Martin is the man.
Yeah. I mean, for Jeff Sharpe, maybe not a bad trip. Maybe that was entertaining for him.
No, that freaked him the fuck out.
Okay. All right, so he does have a bit of a normal personality under all of it, I guess.
He is human. He is susceptible to I think once you ingest psychedelics, you're vulnerable, and any human, no matter how crazy or badass, is going to be vulnerable. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Especially somebody who's done so many horrible things.
Yeah.
Because you're going to reap what you sow when you go there.
So, sort of two things that, common threads that I've heard so far is, if I were to summarize, life itself is scary, and you like them when things go off the rails. Any particular, and it sounds to me basically you're summarizing of those things as it's fun. Is there something in specific that you think is fun about when things go off the rails?
I mean, I think it's just the contrast to life, barring these last few weeks, Like in life, you have your routine and crazy shit doesn't really happen. So we watch these movies just to see the other side and to see like what people are thinking about and to get an idea of that darker side of things and be prepared for it if we ever should run into it,
Mm-hmm. Would you say it's like the sheer spontaneity of when things go off the rails? Like it's entertaining in the fact that it's unpredictable, basically.
I mean, to me, unpredictable is entertaining. Like when I watch a horror film, and I see so many horror films, and I'm like, oh, this is so formulaic. It's killing me. You know what I mean? Like I watched, I don't know. A lot of people I've heard have liked this film. Some people have said it's not good, but I watched Girl on the Third Floor, and I thought it was entertaining, and it was. But at the end of it, it was I felt it was very formulaic. Multiple times in the movie, I'm like, okay, this is going to happen, and then sure enough, it happens on cue. Yeah. I'd rather see something that's like surprising me at every turn. Like, whoa, Breaking Bad is one of my favorite things ever, and I think that almost is dark enough to be considered somewhat horror once you get into the depths of it. And that's a show that the writing, they're just keeping you guessing all the time. They're surprising you all the time. Like, there's holy shit moments in every episode. And like these decisions these people have to make with these choices they're faced with. And that's the kind of writing that I want to see more of in horror.
Hmm.
I was just thinking that, like, that's something that you can do more with episodal things like series is instead of movies where you can. One of the draws of Breaking Bad is that it keeps you guessing every episode. Like, doesn't matter what happens in the miniature story of this episode, something by the end of this episode is gonna just flip your head upside down. Like, what the fuck just happened? And I was trying to think of any horror series like that, and I think The good one, if you haven't seen it on Shudder, is Channel Zero. It's similar to like American Horror Story in the fact that it has different themes each season, different characters, and yeah, some of them are interesting, some of them less interesting, but it's definitely one of those like episodal things. Like every time you're at the end of the episode, it definitely delivers with that punch of I did not see that coming.
I'll have to add that one to my list.
Yeah, well, you got some time to watch things, you know.
I actually watched the first episode of Haunting of Hill House last night. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that.
Haven't seen it. I've heard good things. I've also heard bad things. I don't know.
I've heard mostly good things, and I finally decided to check out the first episode, and I was kind of like, I was into it, and then the very end of it, it kind of got me, and I was like, okay, I definitely want to watch the next episode of this. I won't spoil it for you if you haven't seen it, but after the first one, I am intrigued to see what happens next.
Okay.
So as an adult, do you have sort of a horror crew now, friends or family that you share your love of horror with?
Well, since I've been doing these horror cons, and I've been meeting a lot of people online, like Chris, for example, which has been really cool, meeting some people on the internet, which it's took me out of my comfort zone to kind of go out and meet people on the internet. It was never something that I was comfortable doing, but it's turned out to be a rewarding thing. I met some amazing people. Chris is awesome. I met Martin online, and he's been just like teamed up with me on this comic, which has been amazing. I've been trying to get my wife into horror. She has anxiety, so sometimes she has a hard time, but she's been doing a lot of SFX makeup because she's a makeup artist anyways. So when we do the cons, she'll have an X carved into my head or like a bullet hole in somebody, and that's been fun.
Yeah,
she did a Chelsea Grin makeup, and I have a friend who's really into horror who lives out of state, but we shoot the shit about like movies and stuff on the phone, and I'm just starting to meet people on the scene at these conventions, but now it's all on hold, which is bumming me out.
All right, so there's some social aspect. You got something positive going on there.
Yeah. Thank you for that, by the way. That's the same exact thing right back at you. Awesome meeting you, running into you and Martin and all the other people I've done. There's a lot of the same here. Like the horror crew nowadays is mostly virtual, but
yeah. And while we're on this topic, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Slasher app, but it's pretty cool. It's started by this guy Damon, and it's all horror community app. It's pretty neat. It's still kind of buggy, but he seems to be like getting more people on it by the day. So it might be something you and maybe the listeners want to check out.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna check that one out. It's just called Slasher.
Yep, it's in the App Store. It's called Slasher. It's free, and it's kind of like a Facebook or an Instagram for the horror community. It's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And it's uncensored, which is cool, too. Like, you can post boobs up there.
I like boobs.
I was able to premiere one of my variants for the last issue of Sharp Knives uncensored up there, which was a neat thing to be able to do.
Awesome.
So you mentioned that you got back into Halloween as an adult. Any good stories there?
Yeah.
Well, I have a 5-year-old, and she's very into Halloween.
Nice.
As far as me as an adult, I don't know. I've always just been kind of too busy, stuck working, with the exception of the year that I did the Towley thing. I actually, when I did Towley, I was security guard for this CD release show, so that was kind of a trip. I was like checking people in, selling tickets.
Hold on,
and then there was people fighting outside, and I'm like, shit, do I have to take this thing off?
No, leave it on.
But they were outside, so I'm like, all right, I don't have to deal with it.
It's just, I'm laughing, thinking to myself, as a guest, do I take that security guard, seriously? Like, how tight is the security here?
No. If I went to a place and Tally was a security guard, I would still give him the benefit of the doubt. I would still think to myself, like, this could be a switcheroo ploy. Like underneath that Tally costume, you're like 350 and 6 foot tall, and you could easily
that's the funny thing is, could you imagine the video of some patron getting their ass beat by Towley?
Yes, I can, and it's fucking awesome.
You shouldn't have come here.
It's funny because I do actually have a black belt in karate, but I can't imagine putting it to use wearing that Towley costume.
Yes.
That would be fucking great.
It was literally made from a poster tube and 2 towels, and like the poster tube was attached to the top of a baseball cap on my head. So it was a really awkward thing to wear.
I think you should resurrect that costume and post an instructional karate video, not even related to Halloween. Just
That's a great idea. Do a full kata in towel costume.
Be very serious about it too, like the whole time.
Yes.
Like, don't break character at all.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to look into making that happen.
Any least favorite costumes that you've had to deal with?
Let's see. The towel costume, in a way, was probably maybe my least favorite at the same time because it was so damn uncomfortable to wear.
Mm-hmm.
Chris knows about that.
I can relate. Made a giant suit of armor out of EVA foam and cooked in the Atlanta sun.
Damn. So you like Guar?
Kinda, yeah. I got Guar a lot. I was a Warhammer character from the Chaos faction, Typhus, and it was just a giant suit of Space Marine, evil Space Marine armor, but it was like maybe 80 pounds altogether, and yeah, mostly foam. Yeah. But I did get Guar a lot. I got Guar, Big Daddy, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, because he was green.
What?
But,
okay.
Yeah, the shell thing on the back, kind of. I don't know. It was a kid. The kid was like 6.
Oh, well, all right, fine.
But yeah, I had a similar answer to that question, which was that was my favorite costume because the costume itself was awesome, and also least favorite costume because I took it into the Dragon Con parade once and almost died of heat stroke. Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. My asshole friend DJ is like, yeah, it's 1 more block. You said that 3 more blocks, or three blocks ago. And I didn't finish the parade. I ultimately just had to sit out.
That's no fun.
Better alive than sorry.
Yeah. It's funny, really, my main concern wasn't my health. It was just, oh man, I don't want to pass out in the middle of this parade and fuck the parade up for everyone.
But then you could have been carried as a hero through the rest of the parade.
Yeah. No, they would probably get ambulances and paramedics involved and the parade would have been ruined. So I'm glad I didn't ruin the parade. And I'm glad I didn't, die.
I'm just picturing now an entire parade like walking around you as you struggle to get back up.
Right?
Rolling this way, rolling that way, kicking your feet.
Like the kid in the Christmas story.
I've fallen and I can't get up.
Go back! Go back!
Oh, God.
Fun, interesting side story regarding that movie. Scut Farkas, the bully from the Christmas story.
Eyes.
Yeah, out of nowhere, he fucking followed me on Twitter one day on my Pieces page. I was like, holy shit, that's Scut Farkas. And then I realized how many horror movies I'd actually seen him in. I think he was in Jason vs. Freddy and a couple of others too.
Oh, is he in horror movies too?
Yep.
He looks the part, I guess.
Yeah.
Has there been a time when you were actually terrified of something as an adult?
There you go. Back on track.
I mean, I feel like what's going on right now is probably the scariest shit that I've encountered. Like,
yeah.
Like my mom lives next door. She's high risk with this whole thing. Like, my wife's got anxiety. I got a kid, and just this whole virus thing is probably the scariest thing in adulthood, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely hitting close to home. I fucking went and did laundry at my apartment complex the other night and wore like gloves and mask and everything.
Yeah.
May you live in interesting times, eh?
It's a trip, and going to the supermarket is now the scariest part of life.
Yeah.
Well, second scariest. I think Walmart would be scarier.
Yeah, I won't go there.
Right? Like that's just not even on the table, right? No.
Not on the table.
At least at Publix, they're wiping down the carts for you.
Mm-hmm.
Which is good, because I can't find any fucking gloves. I've gone to the store probably 3 times in the last 2 months, and couldn't find gloves, sanitizer, or masks. I managed to get 2 masks from somebody else that I had to talk to about a week ago, but I still don't have gloves or hand sanitizer. Can't find any.
Gloves and masks they do have on Amazon, but sanitizer and the other stuff, it's not much luck.
Yeah, that's definitely a real life fear going on for all adults right now, adults and children.
Yeah. So almost ironically, the next question would be: so have these fears caused you to change your behavior in any way?
That's a big 10-4.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't leave the house without a mask and gloves nowadays.
Yeah.
Following the guidelines, you know, it's just doing what everybody else. Well, I can't say everybody else because I went to the supermarket yesterday and they had the aisles with like supposed to be the arrows one way each aisle, and just nobody gets it. Everybody's fucking airhead and like they're throwing their gloves on the ground in the parking lot and they're like just not listening and not. It makes me just wonder, like, does fucking humanity, like, do we fucking deserve this shit? Because we're really fucking shit up. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
people are not listening. They're stupid.
Well, as George Carlin once said, think about the average, person with the average intelligence, and then realize 50% of the world is stupider than that. Because that's the world. That's the definition of the word average. You know?
Middle ground, and everything below that is not middle ground.
Right.
And the older I get, the more I realize how much lower that average is than what I used to think it was. You know?
Yeah, dude. Like, I fucking made I made a meme about it the other day because I just came to this realization with the whole toilet paper thing. There's a picture of an empty aisle with no toilet paper in it, and it says, "How old were you when you realized that the comical satire of people being panicky and stupid you've seen on TV shows and movies your whole life was actually not satire, but real fucking people?" And the bottom is, this old. I was this old. People are actually that dumb.
It's true, man. It's fucked. Real life horror right there.
Yeah, right?
Stupid people abound.
Yeah, it's not going to be the zombie plague that gets us. It's going to be the stupid plague.
Well, particularly people in large numbers.
Yeah.
For some reason, even in, when they're relatively intelligent, there's something about the dynamics of a mob that,
I like that quote from, I like that quote Tommy Lee says in Men in Black. He's like, a person is smart. People are dumb.
Yeah.
There's more, but I can't remember it all.
Dumb, panicky animals, something like that. But yeah, it's so true.
Going back to movies on that note.
Yes.
So for the next question, looking back over your entire life, not just talking about horror and not just talking about your favorite, what movie do you think you've watched more times than any other?
Horror movie or just movie in general?
You can answer it both ways if you want. But
one of each, maybe.
I've probably watched The Burbs more than any other movie. It's Tom Hanks, Bruce Dern, Rick DeComan, Carrie Fisher,
I remember
Corey
Tom
Feldman.
Hanks being in it.
Yeah.
And the family, the Klopeks, they move in next door and they're mad sketchy, and everyone thinks they're killing people. And they, the neighbors all team up and investigate, and it's hysterical. Like,
I don't think I've ever seen this one. Holy shit, is that Biff from Back to the Future?
Biff? Oh no, I don't. I mean, I'm not sure. There's a character that may be him, but I don't know. You should definitely check that movie out though if you haven't seen it. It's my
it's a classic.
favorite comedy. Like, it's so good.
Is the address actually 666? That's awesome. Yeah, that's going on the watch list.
I'm a person who will rewatch the same movies over and over more than I'll watch new movies that I haven't seen. Like, I've probably seen a lot of the Tarantino movies like about 50 times. Like, I've probably watched Django Unchained and The Hateful Eight and Kill Bill like so many times.
It's a safe go-to.
So what kind of common threads do you see in the kinds of horror you like? I mean, you did mention, realism, but is there any other kind of common thread like cannibalism, occult, metaphysical?
I'd say serial killer would be a good one. Like, I'm always intrigued at an introspective look at a serial killer. I think that's a fascinating thing to explore. Basically, things that, I always say that for me, the most important thing in a movie or a story in general is characters. Like, I want to see good characters. If there's a bunch of characters that I don't care about and I can't emotionally invest in or mentally invest in, then I'm not going to be interested in the story that goes around them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I've got a character who I want to see what this person's going to do, I want to see how they think. That's, they make me laugh. They're interesting. Like, that's what's going to draw me into a story.
Yeah. It's like the difference in between when you're watching a story as an observer or you kind of identify with and almost assume the character of the protagonist. Like if you can identify with them, then you get into it a lot more.
Yeah, but that kind of leads into the next question, which is, why horror? Because if, for example, if all you cared about is good characters, well, there's good character writing in every genre. I mean, there's bad too, but there's also good. So, but trying to drill in on why it is that you enjoy horror specifically, any idea why that might be?
I mean, I think this goes back to just that I'm of that type of person who's drawn to that. I'm drawn to those darker, taboo things that are like the forbidden fruit aspect of like what's behind the curtain. I want the dark stuff that everybody's scared of. It brings curiosity too, and I'm of the mentality that I want to know about it. I want to see what's going on in the dark recesses of people's minds. I'm interested.
It's exciting to you.
Yeah. Like with the character thing, like when you have these movies, a lot of horror movies, you'll see just kind of a bunch of mindless teenagers, and they do stupid things, and they're just dumb in general. And like to me, I have trouble investing in those kind of characters rather than if there's some characters who actually have a little more depth to them. That's I guess where I was going.
So maybe there's a good question. So you're curious, but you just basically said, so I'm curious, but I'm also looking for something interesting and then you gave an example of something you didn't find interesting. So give us an example of something you do find interesting.
All right, let me try to think of a couple of films here. Like Mr. Brooks, for example, or American Psycho, you get this introspective look at these serial killers, and it's like you get to see him in how he thinks, in his psychopathy, and his like being a sociopath, and you get to really see like what it's like to be someone like that, and how they think, and how they make their decisions, and how they live their day to day, and what makes them do the terrible things they do. I just think that's an interesting thing.
Would you say that's a common thread to the other, I almost said common thread to the common thread. You mentioned your common thread being serial killers and that you like that they're realistic. Would you say that's also another thing you like about them is wondering, how these people think and digging into that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Like I thought in Mr. Brooks, when they have the William Hurt as his alter ego, who's really the real killer there. He's it's an internal struggle, and just that kind of depth of character where you have this intelligent main character, and he's schizophrenic. He has this other personality, and they're interacting, and you just have this whole world of like just mental back and forth going on just in this one character, and that's a deep character right there. That's something that interests me rather than some brainless teenager who wanders into the haunted house and gets killed.
So let's step outside of horror for a minute there. Crap, and I had the phrase on the tip of my tongue and I lost it. Psychological something.
Poopery.
Yeah.
Psychological poopery.
Yes. Shit. I lost it.
Psychological shit can also be something.
Yeah. Basically the psychological aspect of it. I was going to say stepping outside of horror. Is that something that you also see as a defining element of the other kinds of media you like as well?
Yeah, I would say so. Like it's outside of horror, I'm a huge Tarantino fan, huge Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul fan. Like I think those shows and movies are for the same reasons. We get these incredible characters everywhere. Like every character is interesting. Every character has great depth and decisions they have to make and situations that they find themselves in that they have to make. They have to figure out what they're going to do. And I try to do that with the comic that I'm writing too, with Sharp Knives. Like I'm trying to give you an introspective look at this serial killer, Jeffrey Sharpe, and his day-to-day life and how he thinks and what his MO is and like what his quirks are. And then like I want to just take it up even further by bringing in another character he's going to be kind of facing off against, who's just this totally other end of the spectrum, horrible type of person. And like, what his quirks are, and like I want them both to be faced throughout this thing with decisions and like choices they have to make as to how they're going to proceed. That is just going to make for a crazy, interesting story.
Yeah, you definitely got some solid character development in the comic so far. Like, what was it? One of the mafia guys. I remember one of the funnier parts I read was where I think he like yelled at somebody and made him flinch or something.
Oh yeah, where he's got the valet at the club who saw some things that he needs to know about, and he gets his rocks off, intimidating the shit out of this poor guy. You know what I mean? And like just seeing those little personality traits of these fucked up people, like that's for me, that's entertainment. You know?
Yeah,
that's what
developing rich characters just makes a story that much better.
Well, it's kind of interesting to hear this because, you know, that's sort of been like a thing for me my entire life, is trying to understand why people do the things they do. That's not actually one of the things that draws me to horror. There's something else that draws me to horror, but I would say that trying to understand why people do the things they do has been something that I don't want to say struggled with, but has been a fascination for me my entire life, going all the way back to childhood. I remember walking into a room where my parents were arguing to ask them a question. It was an innocent question. I don't even remember what the question was, but I just remember being naive and thinking, oh, well, you know, they're fighting, but I'll go in and I'll ask this question, and having one of them, I think my stepmother, turn to me and yell at me, and walking out of the room feeling like, well, that wasn't fucking cool. Like, why did she yell at me? Her argument was with my dad. You know, it was completely I don't want to say unfair, but I could just tell it was wrong for her to take her anger out on me. And so there's always been this part of me that has, I don't know, I don't want to say was curious why she did what she did. I don't really care about her as a person, but you know, that's just an example of it's interesting to me how people do things that on the surface or on paper may or may not seem logical, but they do. They do things that, looking back, might seem odd, but you know, I'm sure to her it made perfect sense at the moment.
Were your majors in college split between anthropology and sociology, Steve?
Nope, computer networking.
Okay.
Although, I mean, if I had an unlimited budget and unlimited amount of life, I'm sure I would enjoy both of those topics. So,
yeah, you said you have something that drives you to horror. Can we hear what that is?
Sure. Listen to my interview. The first two interviews that Chris and I did were interviewing each other, and we've discussed whether or not we should make those official episodes or restrict them to Patreon subscribers.
Because they kind of suck.
I don't think they suck.
No, not really. No, they were good. That'd bring us up to 12, I think.
Yes, including this one. Yeah. So I think for you, if I were to sum up this call, then, I mean, you mentioned the taboo and the curiosity, but it sounds like, you know, we may have refined that going back to the psychological part of it, that there's not just a curiosity about crossing the line, but, you know, understanding what the characters are thinking. Like you mentioned, their MO, their decisions, their choices. So there's some psychological interest, drama. I don't know what the word is. I had it on the tip of my tongue and I was about to write it down and something happened and it slipped. Maybe I'll think of it later and add it. We have a list of, we're keeping track of the responses, so I'll probably come up with a better word and write it in that list later.
It'll come to you later, probably while you're pooping.
Yeah. That's how it is.
Yeah, I'd say we got to the root of all the things, and it's this pretty solid interview as usual. Anthony, thank you for being here today. It was a pleasure getting to the nitty-gritty of what it is about horror that you like and dislike, and yeah.
Well, thanks for having me, guys.
No problem, thank you. And please do come again and visit us again at our website, horrormakesushappy.com. We have a schedule posted there for who we're going to be interviewing next. We're making a lot of progress currently due to the fact that most people are, indoors. But if you do see that list on the website and you know anybody on the list and can possibly point us in the general direction, please do drop us a line. Otherwise, just stop by the site to let us know how we're doing. Horror makes us happy.com. HMUH.com.